And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another episode of Doing the Work, the first show on the Back Home Network covering IU women's basketball. This is our 170th episode, recorded on Tuesday, September 22nd, September 23rd, isn't it?
23rd, yes.
23rd. I'm your host, Jeff Marlow, joined by my co-host, Kathy Amos. Tonight, we will be taking an early look at what USC Trojans may look like this upcoming season. And I want to apologize. We're having a couple technical issues so we're a little late coming on tonight. So for those of you following us along with the Workaholics on YouTube, our apologies, but we'll try and give you a quality show tonight. And we'll start our show as we do every episode of Doing the Work, and that's with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And Kathy, I'm going to go with, this was announced earlier last week. Addison Nemechek committed to Indiana, 2026 forward, 6'2", 4-star from New Jersey, plays with the Philly Rise on the Nike circuit. As a junior, she averaged 14 points a game, 7 rebounds, 3 assists in 24 minutes, so roughly about 3/4 of a game. And it was first reported from Brandon Clay of 24/7 Sports. She combines length and versatility to produce on both ends of the floor. Her ability to be effective with her jumper on the glass and on defensive switches is a separator in this class. She played at a high level on the club circuit with Philly Rise. She has an upside with her physical gifts that could lead to even more production at the college level. If she shoots the three-pointer in the high 30s, Nemechek's value to a college program only increases as a result. And so that's our Hoosier Proud banner moment, is the commitment of Addison Nemechek. And our banner moment is brought to you by Home Field Apparel, presenting sponsor of the Back Home Network. Home Field is constantly releasing new schools or updating its products for schools in the existing line. You're bound to find something for you or anyone in your life that just loves great collegiate gear. Not only do you get quality apparel, but you are supporting an Indiana-based business that has its roots in the Kelly School of Business. Go to homefieldapparel.com and use our promo code HOME23, that's HOME23. You get 15% off your entire first order. That's promo code HOME23 for 15% off. Once again, the website is homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. And in news, a couple news items. I stole a news item with Addison Nemechek. That was also news. Hoosier Hoops on Kirkwood announced for October 2nd instead of Hoosier Hysteria. That was, and I'm Kathy, I want to get your thoughts about that when we get to, maybe as we conclude your Amos angle, because I'm kind of interested to talk about that a little bit. And Dr. Peggy Martin was inducted to the IU Hall of Fame. She was kind of the beginning of the IU women's basketball program. So those were kind of the news thoughts there, or the news of it. And with that, and they also did announce at least since we were on, they've announced the Big Ten schedule as it, what dates they're playing. I haven't got times or anything yet, but we do know the complete schedule now as well for the IU women. So you can look that up online at iuhoosiers.com. So Kathy, we'll throw it over to you for the Amos angle. And welcome.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Sorry, I got the date wrong there in the run sheet. That's in case people wondered. Jeff know what date it was, but when I wrote the run sheet, I evidently did not know what today was. So, yeah. So anyway, happy Tuesday, everyone out there. If you're listening live or listening after the fact, happy whatever day you're listening. So yeah, it was again, now we're getting a little closer. We're inching a little closer into September. We're starting to get more news, right? We got the Hoosier Hoops, like you've mentioned, Peggy Martin. We've seen some stuff where, the men and the women's team were helping with some younger kids earlier today as well, if you saw that on Twitter. But the exciting thing for me, is the Addison Nemechek. We got a nice 4-star recruit. It looks like it committed for 2026. And I think this is, our second or third freshman commit now. So I know we had made a couple of coaching changes specifically with somebody specific for recruiting. So it sounds like he's really making some inroads for Indiana. So that's really great to see. Hopefully we're, kind of restocking some of the freshman cupboard again as we continue to move along here. So yeah, Jeff, you asked about my ideas on the Hoosier Hoops. I read a little bit about it and it sounds really cool. Like they're going to be actually doing some things in the street of Kirkwood and opening it up and doing some skills contests, or I'm not sure if it was contests or just demonstrations or whatever, but I thought what a really neat way to bring this back to the public. I'll be interested to see how they kind of regulate in terms of not making a whole lot of people getting overly crowded on Kirkwood. And then I wonder if they're going to set up like temporary bleachers or what they're going to do, because, otherwise hopefully people will get there early. I get it upstairs, which has like a prime spot there on their balcony to overlook it. But I think it's really great, right? Hoosier Hysteria seemed to kind of maybe have run its course, if you will. And this is an interesting way to bring it back, to still trying to garner some interest in both the men and the women's team. So I like the change. I think it'll be kind of neat. I'm just curious how they'll get it out to the public like us. Hoosier Hysteria had been before on Big Ten Plus for the last couple of years, where you could see it. So I'll be curious if they'll have some kind of live stream somehow, or how they'll kind of pull this off. So I'm intrigued, and I like the change personally, because Hoosier Hysteria, I'm not even sure I bothered watching much of it last year. So I think it just kind of ran its course. I think I read a couple other schools have started doing something similar as well, where they're doing something not necessarily in their basketball court, but doing something more like this in the streets. So, but what are your thoughts?
I totally agree with you. I think Hoosier Hysteria kind of ran its course. I can remember when it kind of started out as Midnight Madness, or what that was what was titled, even if it wasn't strictly Midnight Madness.
Right.
And I just think I do believe I really do believe it had run its course with that. I just think that I'm not sure about the hoops on Kirkwood. How I agree with that about regulating and stuff. They were advertising at the football game the other day, like the men are having like a cream and crimson game, like almost like, okay, we're not going to do Hoosier Hysteria, but we'll do some type of exhibition for just the fans. And I think that's the other thing. Now, I don't think Hoosier Hysteria, first of all, I think Tom Crean did a better job with Hoosier Hysteria than either Archie Miller or Mike Whitson did. And I'm not trying to be totally negative on those two. I think Coach Crean saw it as, he was going to kind of get some live action, where we saw less and less live 5-on-5. Now, it wasn't going to be game speed, but you at least got to see with Coach Crean, there had been some 5-on-5 action in there. That my mic's messing up here. Here we go. But they had, you saw some of that 5-on-5 action, and that's what I wanted to see in Hoosier Hysteria. We got less and less, if any of that, the last few years. So exactly. I agree. I think it ran, of course, but I also think the other thing that helped really, kind of make it non-exist or not needed is now the NCAA allows you to play these exhibitions against another school that doesn't count against your game limit or count against on your record. You don't need the Hoosier Hysteria per se, except for the fans. And I think you can do some things like a Hoosier hoops on Kirkwood to get the fans involved and things like that. So I totally agree with you about that.
Yeah. So, the men announced a scrimmage, right? But not a women. That'll be open to the public.
I have not seen a women's one.
Yeah, me neither. So, cool.
I hope that changed. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Both times. They did that. I didn't see it on the women's schedule when I was kind of putting things into my calendar yesterday or the day before. But maybe they will, maybe they won't. But I think it's interesting. I think the one, again, this is not men's podcast, but they're going to have one in Indianapolis, I think is where the one is with Baylor. So I hope maybe the women will kind of move down that path. Probably a little too late to do it this year, but I hope the women's game starts maybe moving along that line. And maybe the women can't yet. I don't know. Maybe there's still some quirks in the rules to keep them from playing that kind of off-campus exhibition type game. I'm trying to remember with that, because I don't remember the women doing it last year either. So, and I know the men did. So with that, but anything else you want to throw at us in the Amos angle?
No, I think that covers it.
All right. Well, this week we continue our preview around what we think will be the top teams of the Big Ten. And this week it's USC, the Trojans. Last year, 31-4, finishing first in the Big Ten, and they were the number one seed in the NCAA tournament. They were, I hate to use the term upset, they lost in the Big Ten tournament championship to UCLA, and then they were still a number one seed in the NCAA tournament. They averaged 80.7 points per game. They only gave up 59.4 a game. Currently projected in Charlie Cream's way too early bracket College is a 5 seed. And I'm going to let Kathy talk about some of the personnel, but I think there's going to be a big reason why they're not considered to be a 1 or a 2 seed for this year and compared to a 5. And so, but they right now, or should I say right now, the other issue with them is they only are returning 1 starter. And part of that, again, because the person Kathy's going to highlight probably the most here is somebody who's not going to be available this year. But we're going to let Kathy talk about some of the individuals, and I'll kind of jump in with it.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeff. So yeah, when I was kind of researching and putting this together, of course, we know Juju Watkins, that's the person Jeff was alluding to. She is out, most likely tearing her ACL there in the NCAA tournament. She is really highly doubtful to come back at all in the season. I think everyone recognizes her name if they've watched any kind of women's hoops at all. So just to kind of level set with a little bit of some of her stats that they will be missing out on. She played around 34 minutes per game. She was averaging 24 points per game, almost 7 rebounds and 3.4 assists. And that doesn't even count on how she affected the defensive end as well. I think we know with her length that Juju could really get in and help defend that perimeter as well. So I obviously that's the biggest blow, but I think, Jeff, that I knew that, they had lost a couple of people, but only having 1 returning starter, that just really left their cupboard pretty bare. So I'll talk a little bit of the transfers out if you want to then talk about people coming in.
Yeah, I'll take it real quick. I want to say, and Juju's a big loss. I mean, she is a legit player of the year candidate in any season she's healthy. And so it is a serious loss. I think the thing that is interesting as we talk through some of these, USC the year before, going into last season, I think they had either the number 1 or number 2 recruiting class. So they should have had some talent, and I think they probably still do. And we're going to talk about some of the transfers in a little bit. But this is not a team. Let's not have a pity party per se for them because they're only going to be a 5 seed right now. And we'll see how it plays out. I think Lindsay Gottlieb does a nice job of coaching. But this will be a little bit of a challenge because I'm sure losing Juju like they did in the first game of the NCAA tournament, I believe it was, or maybe the second game, but it was at USC because they were in that host round, then first and second round when she got hurt. And I wanted to say it was the first round, but yeah, so she's gonna, I won't say challenge, but she's definitely going to have to put some pieces, kind of move some of the puzzle pieces around, and you do have to pick up for a kid, a young woman that is, like I said, a legitimate national player of the year candidate. So, yeah, why don't you go ahead and take some of the transfer out here, Kathy?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so transfer out, I think the biggest one, at least when I was looking at it, in my opinion, was Kaylee Heichel. She averaged just under 17 minutes per game, and she was averaging 6 minutes per game as well. The reason I highlight her is because after Juju went down, she really seemed to be the one that they went to kind of step up, even though, 6 points per game, it doesn't sound like a lot, but again, she stepped in there and ended up starting 7 games for them in the year. And I think if you're going to lose Juju, she was one that was going to be looked at to come in. The other big loss is Avery Howell. She ended up transferring in conference to Washington. She was a freshman guard. She was also, Avery Howell also started a number of games from them, 3 of them, but she was averaging 20 minutes per game and 7.5 points per game, as well as 3 rebounds per game. And then she was averaging 40% at 3-point shooting. They had 2 other transfers, probably not very impactful in terms of production. Dominique Darius was a redshirt junior guard who saw very limited time. In fact, I couldn't even find her in her hoop stats, but I saw her in a number of other places mentioned that she was transferring out. And then last, Aaliyah Gales went to Utah State. Same thing, limited minutes, at just 4.6 minutes per game, just under a point per game when she played.
Yeah, and I gotta go with that. I think Heckle's a big loss, but I'm not sure Howell isn't a bigger loss just because of the fact of how many years she would have had left to play, and she was already getting about 21 minutes a game. So I think Howell will be felt as far as transfers
longer. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. London Jones transferring crosstown. Yeah. London Jones has started almost the entire season last year at UCLA. She averaged 8.5 points a game. She made 35% on her threes and set a program record with 84 threes made at UCLA last year. So interesting, she went from a high-profile starter at the number 1 team, another number 1 seed who advanced to the regional final and is transferring across town. And we kind of talked about this when we previewed UCLA about a month ago, that this was one that kind of had us scratching our heads because it just, again, and you got to get past it. Sometimes I still have a struggle with this of getting past the idea that in the portal and NIL era, nothing sometimes is going to seem, there are a lot of things that are not going to seem logical. You're like, why are you leaving? You're already starting because there's either more money or you think there's more, there's something more. We saw it a little bit with Yarden. I mean, Yarden started for 3 years here at IU, and she's leaving to, for what she thinks is a better opportunity. It may not seem logical, but that's, what happens here. And this is the one that kind of intrigues me, though, Kathy. Kara Dunn, Georgia Tech, 5'11" guard. She averaged 15.5 per game, 5.8 rebounds, and shot 35% on threes at Georgia Tech last year. Now, ACC women's basketball is pretty decent. So this is not somebody who's coming in from a group of 5 type conference. It's not a MAC. It's not a Missouri Valley. She played in one of the better, the best conferences in America. So you got to at least have the understanding that she can produce in a Big Ten level schedule. It will just be interesting to see how they use her, especially with Juju not playing. Between her and London Jones, do they kind of pick up try to pick up as much of the slack as they can for Juju's, missed production?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in the hits keep coming, I guess, we could talk about who graduated. And I think that has a huge impact on them as well. So, not even discounting the transfers out. They had 4 transfer out. They also graduated 4 people. So Kiki Irifan is probably the number 1 headliner of this group, right? That graduated. She ended up going 4th in the WNBA draft to Washington. She had played 30 minutes per game, averaging 18 points and 8 rebounds per game. They also lost Raya Marshall. She also got drafted in the WNBA. She went 28th overall to LA Sparks. She started all 33 games as well for them, averaging 24 minutes, 8 points per game, 8 rebounds per game. Talia von Oelhoffen, she started all of their games as well, and she was their starting point guard and gave them 24 minutes per game, 6 points per game, and 3.3 assists. And then last, they graduated their backup center to Kiki, Clarice Akunwafo. I think that's how you say it. Again, she was the backup, so a lot less production than the other 3 I just mentioned at 10 minutes, 1.2 points per game, 2.5 minutes or rebounds per game. So so there you go. 3 of their starters graduated, and then they lost Juju to injury, and that's how you get to their one returning starter that they have in Kennedy Smith, who did play all 3, started all of the games she played in, and at 29 minutes, 9.5 points per game. So that's a lot, Jeff, I think, to lose, right? That's a lot of production to lose. You got 1 starter coming back and only really two transfers coming in. And that puts a lot on their freshmen and their upcoming other, returning players to really make a huge leap for them.
Yeah, and I think that's where you go back to the transfers in. London Jones and Kara Dunn, especially early in the season, Kathy, I think are going to be expected to carry quite a bit of the load. And I'm with you. I thought Irifan was a really good player. I liked her at Stanford. I really did. I liked her at Stanford. She came in and played 1 year at USC out of the transfer portal. Marshall was more of a role player. And I was kind of shocked when she got drafted in the WNBA draft, because I just didn't see WNBA, but she played that role. She was kind of, in the women's game as best she can be, kind of a rim defender, rebounder, kind of did some of the dirty work. Not that she was dirty, it's just that she did, she was willing to do some things that some of the stars didn't have to do. And I think Von Olfen is one that will be felt, because again, I think kind of a role player there. Only averaged 6 a game, but she started every game. She was their starting point guard. So I think it'll be interesting. And I liked Kennedy Smith last year. I really did. I was wondering why she was, maybe only getting about 29 minutes a game when I looked at the run sheet. But then again, they had so much talent last year. Getting 29 minutes was actually pretty good. And as you mentioned, she started every game she played. So that gives them something. And this whole season for USC, to a degree, at least early on, is going to be kind of judged on what would this team have looked like with a healthy Juju Watkins. I know we shouldn't say it that way, but that's what the average fan is going to think about.
That's right. Yeah, and to your point with Kennedy Smith and how deep they were, she was third most minutes on the team last year. So only Juju Watkins and Kiki Arifin averaged more than 30 minutes per game. So that tells you how at least spread out they were. The unfortunate thing with all of those minutes, most of them are gone. If you run down that whole sheet. That's a lot of not just production, but a lot of minutes that they're losing as well. I mean, you lose 4 of your 5 starters, and you lose Avery Howe, who had 20 minutes per game, and then right after that, Kaylee Heckel was next on the team. So really, of your top, 7 or 8 people in terms of minutes played, they're only getting one person back in Kennedy Smith. So I just think that's interesting. I don't know how they're going to fit their pieces together. They have one freshman that I've noted that I could find. Her name's Jazzy Davidson. She is a 6'1" guard / forward who came from Oregon. She was ranked number 2 in their class, or 3, depending on the ranking services. That was the only freshman of note that I could find on their roster, Jeff. I don't know if you were able to find anyone else, but that was the only person I really saw mentioned.
Yeah, I get to one of those also where I didn't do a deep dive into the roster, Kathy, but again, I can't remember the girl's name, and maybe she transferred out. We didn't talk about her, but there was a girl last year. Where was she from? Like Idaho or someplace that IU was in on, and to the very last part of the recruitment, she chose USC at the end. So if those kids came back, and they didn't probably play a whole lot last year, if they're back as sophomores, they at least had talent in high school. So I think it'll be interesting to see some of this mix, because again, we're just not out there. We're not as much as we follow it. We aren't into the LA market as much. We're not, we don't get, the news about the average player coming out of USC. London Jones, a Kiki, a Juju is going to garner headlines. Some of the others aren't. But Davidson is definitely a freshman to keep an eye on. She was the number 2 or 3 ranked recruit in all of the United States last year. So again, another high profile get for this team and Lindsey Gottlieb. So, but I think that's part of the reason you said, Kathy, you break it down like that. Now you see why Charlie Cream has them down to a 5 seed, right, especially with so many of the unknowns. You don't know how it's going to look without Juju. You don't know how the puzzle pieces will fit together with some of the, with London Jones and Cara Dunn and Jazzy Davidson. You don't know what it's per se going to look like until you get some games into the schedule. You're going to probably get to the middle of December before you really know what USC is.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, I mean, you're going to assume then that Kennedy Smith is starting, and hopefully your 2 transfer ends. Obviously, London Jones and Cara Dunn will most likely start. And then you got Jazzy. And then after that, you're hoping that somebody that was on your roster last year is coming back, is going to be able to take some big step forwards, because otherwise they weren't really, able to hit that transfer market, it looked like, and really get a lot of transfers in to help fill those spaces.
Totally agree. You got anything else you want to talk about the roster?
No, I don't know. There's not much else we can talk about, because there's just too many unknowns. Like, there's just too much unproven production, if you will. I want to use that phrase again. So no, not much for us to really talk about. Unproven. That's right.
There's not a lot of production. Exactly. So let's talk about the schedule real quick, and I want to break it down to non-conference. This is and I'm going to cut USC some slack here, because we talked about the IU non-conference a little bit about. There's not really a lot of high profile. They built this schedule more than likely with the idea that Juju Watkins was going to be healthy, and that they wanted marquee schedule. And so
they weren't kidding with this schedule.
No, they start out and then some of these are contracts that are signed for 3, 4, 5 year, probably 4-year deals at the minimum. 2 or 4 years, I would say, because usually they're going to be even number for the most part. But like they opened up at North Carolina State, made the tournament last year. South Carolina went to the final game. The next game, Notre Dame made the tournament last year. So that's their first 3 non-conference games that we see, and then they get a match. They go to Washington, or they host Washington, and then in December they play UConn, the defending national champion. So their non-conference schedule is flat out loaded for a team that all of a sudden, or at least compared to what they thought was going to be the schedule, when they kind of probably put the schedule and the contracts together, this is not the team that they thought was going to go play with Juju Watkins and a couple other people. And so it'll be very interesting to see how they do against this non-conference slate.
Yeah, I when I went and looked at their schedule, I was blown away. I think of the schedules that we've looked at so far now, candidly, it's been, Indiana's and UCLA and Maryland's, that's it, that I've at least looked at it in terms of a deep dive. I really think that this has to be, and I think it will be, one of the hardest non-conference schedules of any of the Big Ten teams that we're going to see, like hands down. As we mentioned, you can't rattle off, even if you just pick a couple of those, Notre Dame and UConn.
Right.
That would make it tough. But then you throw in NC State and a South Carolina in there as well. Holy buckets. Like, that's 4 non-conference games that they're all tournament teams, to your point, and not just tournament teams, but historically really good teams with Notre Dame and South Carolina and UConn. So, and NC State here of late has been really fantastic as well. So they will definitely be battle tested coming into their non-conference or into the conference schedule. Now, there's probably some other ones that I couldn't find on their schedule that maybe are rounding out some of that, but that was the full schedule that ESPN had out there for them. And looking at the dates, I don't know that they were fitting a whole lot else in there. So that might be it. They might just have the hardest schedule that we're going to see out of any of the Big Ten teams.
I would say they have a few other bye games in there. They're going to help their record.
I think so. I just couldn't find it.
Because that's only what, 5 or 6 non-conference games. You know darn well they're going to have 10 or 11 total. So I'll bet they have a handful of bye games. But still, you realistically could go 0-5 on this non-conference schedule.
Yeah, that's true. And I can see now that this is starting November 9th. So that's right. So yeah, I don't know what else to say about that schedule. And then I didn't look a whole lot
tough?
at their, yes, other than tough. Holy shit. Let's just say that. And then, in terms of looking at some of their road schedules, of course, they'll play UCLA twice. They always will in the conference. But otherwise, I think, road-wise, they did okay in terms of not playing necessarily all the really top teams that were expected. They do get Maryland at home, and then you got some other teams in there as well. Michigan, is that one at home too?
No, that's at Michigan. I think the Michigan schools could be a tough road trip.
Yeah, there you go. I missed that one in the middle there. Yeah. So what are their?
And they do go to Ohio State, but you're right. They don't have a lot of tough, teams that were expected to be toward the top part of the league are not on the road this year. They get a lot of those games at home.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else on the schedule.
Yeah, again, I think we'll know more about USC when we get through some of the non-conference stuff, but I think it's also going to be one of those where their strength of schedule is going to look so good that their record may be a little worse than some other teams, but they're going to be able to get a decent seed if they can play to where they think they can by the end of the year. And again, I'm totally with you about Juju. I don't think there's any reason for Juju to come back at all this year, because the earliest she probably comes back is February, and I don't see that being a good reason to come back. I mean, she injured herself early March. That's basically become about a year injury to come back and really be 100%. Yes, can you get back on the floor and be mobile and things? Yes, you can. But so much of Juju's game is her athleticism. She's a good basketball player. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say she has no basketball skill, but she's so athletic, and that's not going to be there. So if I was advising her, then I would tell her to kind of hold on. I wouldn't have her come back. Then the other question you get into that is, Kathy, have we seen the end of Juju Watkins? I don't know where she is. She'll be a junior eligibility-wise, so she would be eligible for the WNBA draft if she could meet that criteria of completing her classes, being graduated at a certain age. So have we possibly seen the last of Juju Watkins on a college campus? I hope not, but it could be. I hope not. But it could be when we start. You might start having a discussion. But then the other thing is, how do you draft her when she's been out a year and coming off a knee injury? And I know other players
exactly.
So, but I think Juju is a special talent. I can't emphasize that enough. But I think their schedule, at least in the Big Ten, favors them a little bit. But they've got to win some games. Obviously, they got to win some of those games in the Big Ten that they're expected to win, especially the home games. Maybe not UCLA, but beating Maryland at home would do wonders for them. Or not do wonders, but would obviously solidify, help, their seed line and things like that. So, but that's the thing. I think that Michigan trip is that, we still hear a lot of things about Michigan State, as we go through our previews and stuff. But this USC team, I just don't know. I know we're throwing them into the top 4 or 5, but I'm just not sure when you look at the roster and everything. But I'll give Lindsey Gottlieb benefit of the doubt right now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And, we're covering him third in our thing here. So I know Sean Donahue here asked what Charlie Cream had our team ranked in the Big Ten. Charlie Cream's only come out with seedings of what he thinks is a bracketology, at least that I found. He has Indiana as an 8 seed. So there were 8 other teams ahead of us. So he did also, he had USC in a 5 and kind of a sneak preview to some of the other schools. He also had Iowa and Michigan as 5s in there. And so, or Michigan State, one of the two. So I'd have to remember which one. And then you have Michigan State as a 6, Washington is 6, Ohio State is a 7. So there's a whole bunch of, Big Ten teams in that 5 through even 9 route where you just got a whole bunch of teams where I'm not quite sure he knew what to do with either. But interesting, again, like here, you would only have 2 teams hosting at the Big Ten if his bracketology held true, which again, he put that out in like April, May timeframe. So it won't.
No, but I'm not sure he's too far off because we think Ohio State's going to be down a little bit. We think, or maybe a lot. We're not sure USC is an elite team right now. So I can see only a couple teams getting home court, or getting to host. So with that, so Kathy, I'll throw it to you. Any final thoughts here on USC?
Yeah, just to reiterate kind of what we said. I think that it's just kudos to Charlie Cream for even trying to put together any kind of meaningful bracketology last spring, let alone trying to look at it now, because there's just so many unknowns with a lot of these teams. And USC is definitely one of them, in my opinion, that just has a huge amount of holes. And then that non-conference schedule being no joke with a bunch of unproven production on their team, especially playing together. I think it's just going to make it a really hard road for them. And to your point, that probably puts a lot of importance on them coming into the conference play and being able to pick up a lot of wins there that maybe they're not expected to win to be able to make it back to that tournament as a 5 seed.
Yeah. My final thoughts are kind of what I've said all along. We really just don't know what this USC team is going to be. London Jones, Kara Dunn, Jazzy Davidson give them some high-level talent. Kennedy Smith gives them a returning starter who played quite a bit and could up her production. But I just don't think we're really going to know much about this team until we get to December and middle of December and see what they do against some of that non-conference action and see what Lindsey Gottlieb's trying to do as far as putting the puzzle pieces together. I think this team could be really good, not necessarily the top 4 seed, but I think this team could be really solid by the end of the year. And I'm not sure I'd want to play them if they were a 5 seed and I was a 4 seed host. I'm not sure I'd want to play them there by the end of the year. But we'll just have to see how it all shakes out. But again, I'm giving Lindsey Gottlieb benefit of the doubt. She's done a good job at USC. She did a nice job at Cal before she went down to USC. So I'm going to give her benefit of the doubt that she can kind of put the puzzle pieces together. It may not look like it early on in the non-conference schedule, but I think by the time we get to the heart of the Big Ten schedule, I think they'll be really starting to progress as we get toward February and March. But we'll just have to remain to be seen. And there's a lot of question marks here. If Juju is healthy, you eliminate some of that. But even with a healthy Juju, there's not a lot returning, at least in terms of production that was for USC last year.
Yep, that's right. All right.
Let's wrap this up. All right, we're going to come back up next. We're going to be back on October the 7th, and we'll be taking a look at the Iowa Hawkeyes on that preview. If you want to see us do the show live and be a part of the live chat, the Workaholics, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/DTW @BackHomeNetwork. That's the @ symbol, youtube.com/@BackHomeNetwork. And you can also be a part of our private community. Find out more at assemblycall.substack.com. Special thanks to John Ringer of rigdesign.com for designing our logos. A big thank you to Bob Thompson for the music you've heard throughout the broadcast. And thank you for listening. We'll be back to talk. Before I get that far, I want to thank my co-host, Kathy Amos, for being alongside me again tonight. And we'll be back to talk about IU hoops with you soon. Until then, keep your elbow in and your eyes on the rim, and let's go Hoosiers. Yeah. Sean put in here, I just saw this pop up after we was finishing. Sounds a lot like Indiana. It does, except Indiana has a little bit easier, a lot easier conference schedule. But Indiana may have actually more puzzle pieces they're trying to fit together than even USC does.
Yeah, I think so too. I think our team looks a lot younger on paper. At least, they do have some experience coming back, especially with some of the transfers coming in. A lot of our transfers coming in are a lot younger than the ones they have coming in too. So I think that makes a big difference. So, well, Jeff, tables are turned. Yeah, sorry. So tables are turned this Saturday. I'm going to the football game. So
Sweet.
I will try my best to yell as loud as I can. It will make zero difference at Iowa City, but I'll still have fun nonetheless. So yeah, my husband Sean and I are making the trip over this Saturday to Iowa City to cheer on the Hoosiers. So I'm looking forward to it. So I'm proudly wearing my Indiana gear to the office every day this week. I've made that decision. I'm going to be completely obnoxious, but in a quiet way. So yeah, I've already got a couple of comments today. So I don't know what your thoughts are, Jeff. I'm cautiously optimistic, but I can tell you a lot of the Hawkeye fans that I've talked to after a number of them did watch that game on Saturday are very nervous now. So hopefully that doesn't seep into our team's mentality and they come out with that same hunger that they did on Saturday night.
Yeah, I think that's obviously Saturday night was fun, and Saturday night was really unexpected. Even that first series when Mendoza got sacked on the second play, I was like, oh man, the offensive line.
We're in trouble.
But after that, I mean, and outside of the blown coverage, it's a 63-3 game. They busted the one coverage and on that pass play, they got them the touchdown that tied it up. But they dominated along the defensive line, especially. The defensive line dominated. Now, I'm cautiously optimistic as well. It's not so much about Iowa overall. Don't get me wrong, because they got talent. Iowa City is just always a tough place for teams to go and play. It's loud. With the way Mendoza's been playing, and my nephew pointed out something to me. So this all goes kudos to him, because we were talking about this after the Indiana State game. You really get the feeling that Sig almost treats those non-conference games like NFL teams treat preseason games. He's going to he's got certain things each game he wants to work on or see, and then he's going to try and fix those before he gets to his Big Ten game. And Illinois, no, I did not. But it was packed. The environment was fun. There were some, but it was very little orange and blue in the stadium. Yeah,
that's good. Anyway, Jeff, shall we call it a night? Yes, we will definitely
have fun.
I will. So with that, everyone will end our show, and we will see you in a couple of weeks on October 7th. Have a good night.
Night, everybody.